Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily.
He accused him of essentially threatening him with a hammer, and you could hear in one audio tape Ray saying that I'm going to smash this through your skull.
Testimony continues in the federal trial of the accused Sarah Lawrence college cult leader. And what caused the Heaven's Gate mass suicide?
These people who are laughing 24 or 48 hours later killed themselves with bags tied over their heads.
A closer look at the infamous cult. Plus, the man accused in the deadly Waukesha Parade appears in court. Why the judge draws parallels to another high-profile case.
There is precedent for that as well in Waukesha County. Yes. And that, of course, is related to the Slender Man cases.
But first, defendant Jussie Smollett yells at the judge moments after a sentence is handed down.
I did not do this, and I am not suicidal. And if anything happens to me when I go in there, I did not do it to myself.
We take you inside the courtroom for the heated exchange. Law and Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmeyer along with Terry Austin. A reprimanding from the judge and outburst from the defendant as a sentence is handed down to the TV star Jussie Smollett, and Terry Austin has been following this case from the very beginning.
In 2019, when Smollett reported that he was the victim of a hate crime. 2 years later, he's given jail time, restitution, and a hefty fine. All of this stems from a hoax attack in 2019 where Smollett claimed he was attacked by two men who poured bleach on him, tied a noose around his neck, and called him racial and homophobic slurs. Later, investigations found Smollett actually faked the attack. In December, a jury found Smollett guilty of making a false report and disorderly conduct. In a sentencing hearing on Thursday, Smollett was sentenced to 150 days of jail time in the Cook County Jail, 30 months of felony probation, more than $120,000 of restitution to the city of Chicago, plus a $20,000 fine. Judge James Lynn said Smollett was selfish, arrogant, narcissistic for following through with the scheme.
There's some conjecture you did it for the money. Frankly, I do not believe that you did it for the money. You were making, the evidence showed, close to $2 million a year when this happened. I don't think money motivated you at all. But the only thing I can find is that you really craved the attention, and you wanted to get the attention, and you were so invested in issues of social justice, and you knew that this was a sore spot for everybody in this country, and you took some scabs off some healing wounds and you ripped them apart for one reason. You wanted to make yourself more famous, and for a while it worked. Everybody was talking about you. The lights are on you. You were actually throwing a national pity party for yourself. And why would you do such a thing? Why would you, I understand, you crave the attention so much, but why would you betray something like social justice issues, which you care so much about? And the only thing I can conclude is that, and I acknowledge, there are wonderful sides to you. There are very giving and charitable and loving sides to you, but you have another side of you that is profoundly arrogant and selfish and narcissistic.
After that, Smollett had an outburst in court, repeating that he was not suicidal.
I am not suicidal.
Okay?
I am not suicidal. I am innocent, and I am not suicidal. If I did this, then it means that I stuck my fist in the fears of Black Americans in this country for over 400 years and the fears of the LGBTQ community. Your Honor, I respect you and I respect the jury, but I did not do this. And I am not suicidal. And if anything happens to me when I go in there, I did not do it to myself. And you must all know that. I respect you, Your Honor. I respect your decision. Jail time. I am not suicidal.
Okay.
Smollett was escorted out of the courtroom holding his fist in the air. He is currently serving his time at the Cook County Jail in Chicago. Brian?
Joining us today is legal analyst Dina Dahl. Dina, a very impassioned sentencing from the judge. What do you think of the judge's sentence and his final thoughts on the case?
You know, it's a bit surprising that he received jail time considering how much good he had done before this. But the judge was really offended about what this may mean for people who have been are victims of hate crimes in the future, and the fact that he took the stand and lied for hours and did it only because the judge believed for attention, which, the way he had his outburst after the sentencing may have also seemed a little bit of an attention grabbing. I don't know that, and some people's views that may have validated what the judge said.
Yeah, now, Terry, Smollett didn't have anything to say before being sentenced. He was offered an opportunity to do so, but he had a lot to say afterwards. Your reaction?
You know what, Brian? I think he declined making a comment because he's thinking about that appeal. He doesn't want to say anything that might adversely affect his opportunity to win the appeal. But he should have expressed some remorse, and he had none. He didn't give any message to the actual hate crime victims out there who now are going to hesitate before they actually bring claims. And the judge mentioned that. And instead of saying anything, he raised his fist in complete defiance. And he basically was shouting out that he's not suicidal. And I believe he did that because he's worried that something could possibly happen to him when he's in jail. And he's basically threatening the world, saying, look, it's not going to be my fault. It's going to be your fault. And I didn't do this, so you all are putting me in a very dangerous position. I think, once again, he's thinking about himself.
Yeah, well, 150 days in Cook County jail, along with 30 months of probation and a number of fines and surcharges and restitution afterwards. We'll see how this continues as we're anticipating a potential appeal, or at least a request for an appeal, in the case of Jussie Smollett. An accused killer, Vallow Daybell's extended stay in an Idaho mental health facility reached its 180-day mark this week as questions loom about her competency to stand trial. This as a closed hearing is held on Friday after sealed documents appeared in her online portal. Known as the Doomsday Duo, Vallow Daybell and her husband, Chad Daybell, are charged with multiple counts of conspiracy to commit murder and first-degree murder for allegedly killing Vallow Daybell's children, JJ and Tylee, and Chad's first wife, Tammy. In June of last year, Vallow Daybell was committed to the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare after she was deemed incompetent to stand trial. Months later, her time there was extended by at least 180 days. That deadline passed just this week. Reports previously submitted to the judge were then sealed, and the judge did so, citing that the documents contained information on Vallow Daybell's mental health and restorative treatment. We will bring you the latest developments out of that hearing on the next episode of Law and Crime Daily. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, what caused nearly 40 people to commit mass suicide? An in-depth look at the Heaven's Gate cult. But first, why a Waukesha County judge looks for guidance from the Slenderman case as a trial date is set for the man accused of the city's Christmas parade attack.
Hi, this is Dan Abrams with exciting news for all of our Law and Crime followers on YouTube. You can now get the live Law and Crime Network with YouTubeTV for all of your daily live trial coverage, legal news, expert analysis, and original true crime programs. Subscribe to YouTubeTV today and then locate Law and Crime in the channel guide. And for only $1.99 a month, you can add the network to your bundle. Watch Law and Crime every day with YouTubeTV. We put you in the jury box.
Welcome back to Law and Crime Daily. A trial date is set for the man accused of ramming his SUV into a Christmas parade in Waukesha, Wisconsin. 6 people were killed and dozens more injured when authorities say Darrell Brooks Jr. drove his SUV past parade barricades. He now faces 83 total charges, including 6 counts of homicide and multiple counts of reckless endangerment. In a court appearance on Friday, Judge Jennifer Durow heard from both sides as the defense argues for a change of venue, saying it would be difficult to find an unbiased jury in Waukesha County for such a highly publicized case. The prosecution argued preemptive jury questionnaires may help determine whether the trial needs to change venues. After that, Judge Durow brought up another high-profile case out of Waukesha County.
We propose it may be extremely helpful to send out jury questionnaires very far in advance. Our idea is try and screen as many people as we can with the significant questions. If anybody's donated money, if anybody was at the parade, if anybody knows somebody who was injured at the parade, things like that.
There is precedent for that as well in Waukesha County.
Yes.
And that, of course, is related to the Slender Man cases. While I was not presiding over that case, I was fully aware and at times involved in the planning, and jury questionnaires were utilized. That was a case where everyone expected it would take a week to impanel that jury, and it took a day. And I think in large part due to the jury questionnaires.
Brooks's month-long trial is now set to begin on October 3rd. Let's bring back legal analyst Dina Dahl and co-host Terry Austin to discuss the change of venue out of Waukesha, Wisconsin. Now, this change of venue argument seems to have 2 points: move the trial or bring jurors from outside the county. So Terry, what are the arguments for moving the trial, and where could they go in Wisconsin that they haven't heard about this case?
Well, actually, I think it would be better to move the trial rather than bring in jurors from another county. I think it'd be much easier. And I do think they should probably move it. Look, you're not going to find another county in the state where they haven't heard about this case. But I think Waukesha County really is a little bit prejudiced. There's so much publicity before the trial. And not only that, I think that, you know, there's a slogan now, Waukesha Strong, and that will affect everyone who lives there. And there's a memorial where the killings took place. So I think it might make sense to move it. Do whatever you can to give the defendant as much as they can under the Sixth Amendment to a fair trial.
Yeah, the other thing I can see as well is there may be someone who at least knows someone who was at the parade or knows someone who knows someone. That's going to be difficult as well. Dina, let's look on the other side, though. How does bringing out-of-county jurors work? And does that make it more likely the jury would be sequestered?
Yes, the jury would be sequestered in that situation. What the judge would decide in Wisconsin is, first, the determination would have to be made that a change of venue is appropriate, kind of like what Terry talked about, you know, that he would have to do it to have a fair trial, whether publicity or because there were so many people at the parade. And also the fact that the jury would be sequestered. But instead of doing that, they would bring the jurors in order to save costs. But they will not do that unless the judge decides that, like, they would have to change the venue, but instead of physically changing it, they would bring jurors in. But that determination would be made in order for them to bring the jurors in.
All right, we'll see how the judge decides then. Thank you both. And a win for the man at the center of the famed Serial podcast, as the Baltimore City State's attorney orders new forensic testing on evidence in the case. Adnan Syed's case rose to fame in 2014 when the podcast Serial broke listening records. The investigative series cast doubt on Syed's 2000 conviction for the murder of his high school girlfriend, 18-year-old Heyman Lee. DNA testing will now be performed on Lee's clothing as well as her rape kit. So far, these items have not been tested for DNA. Syed has maintained his innocence. He has been behind bars since his 1999 arrest. Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, the federal trial of accused Sarah Lawrence Collins sex cult leader. Our own Adam Klasfeld is inside the courtroom. Plus, a celibate cult leader, UFO-based religion, and mass suicide. We take a closer look at the so-called Heaven's Gate cult. Welcome back. We're getting a closer look at the notorious Heaven's Gate cult, ahead of an ABC's 2020 special on the group's infamous leader. Heaven's Gate made headlines back in 1997 when 39 members were killed in a mass suicide. Their bodies were found wearing matching black jumpsuits, Nikes, and armbands saying Heaven's Gate Away Team. Experts say the group's leader, Marshall Applewhite, known by followers as Doe, coerced them to believe that a UFO spaceship was trailing the coming Hale-Bopp comet, and that they must commit suicide to board the aircraft.
What kind of person joins a cult?
They had rules about dressing, rules about sex.
How you brushed your teeth, how you used the toilet.
They didn't have any free will.
If you all choose to think that I'm nuts, then so be it.
We were all celibate individuals?
Being castrated.
There's no sexuality.
He castrates himself.
This is the guy that's responsible for all these people being dead.
He was very deliberate about wanting to go out with a bang, something that everybody would notice, and they did.
The Heaven's Gate 2020 special is set to air Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern on ABC. It's a case that captured the attention of the nation. This week on Prime Crime, Jesse Weber takes a closer look at the Robert Durst case in the second episode of a two-part Prime Crime special.
Hey there, Brian. It's part 2 of our continuing story on Robert Durst. We start with more of Durst's bizarre 2015 interrogation, and then we move into his unforgettable trial in 2021 for the murder of his friend Susan Berman. There are a lot of notable moments, but none more so than when he took the stand. And of course, that cross-examination by prosecutor John Lewin was unlike anything we've ever seen.
You testified in Galveston that that's what happened, correct?
Correct.
But today, when I asked you about the 24th, you said that you were already in the apartment, correct?
I thought you were talking about the 17th.
Well, Mr. Durst, so a moment ago, you said you thought I was talking about the 28th. Now you realize you got caught on a lie, and you're now trying to figure out what can I do to square this.
I am not trying to figure out anything.
And yet it's the conclusion to the Robert Durst saga that many may not have predicted. Tune in to Law and Crime.
Definitely an episode to catch. You can catch new episodes of Prime Crime every Friday at 5:30 and 10:30 p.m. Eastern here on Law and Crime Network. When we come back, we head to federal court in New York as defendant Lawrence Ray stands trial for his part in the Sarah Lawrence College sex cult. Law and Crime Network's Adam Klasfeld. Welcome back to Law and Crime Daily. Now to a case in South Carolina, that of Alec Murdaugh, the former lawyer who faces dozens of criminal fraud charges. A motion was filed this week to hold Murdaugh in contempt of court days after he gave up his claim to his murdered wife's estate. The suspended attorney is charged with more than 70 crimes stemming from allegedly stealing more than $8.5 million from former clients, other attorneys, his former law firm, and the family of his deceased housekeeper over the course of more than a decade. Murdaugh also faces charges in relation to a scheme to commit suicide and allegedly hiring a hitman to kill him so his son Buster could collect a $10 million life insurance policy. That came after his wife Maggie and other son were mysteriously killed months earlier. They were found shot to death at the family's 1,700-acre property. No one has been charged in their murders. Lawyers in charge of Murdaugh's money say the disgraced attorney gave up his claim to his deceased wife's estate because his son Buster was named as a secondary beneficiary. They say that move shields those assets from those he owes money to, which violates a ruling barring him from transferring funds. Maggie's estate was listed for sale last month for $3.9 million. We head now to New York for the trial of alleged Sarah Lawrence sex cult leader Lawrence Ray, as testimony continued Friday in federal court. Ray's alleged crimes date back to 2010. That's when prosecutors say he moved into his daughter's on-campus housing at Sarah Lawrence College. They say he soon assumed a role of father figure to her friends. Prosecutors allege Ray convinced them to move into an apartment with him on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, New York. Over the next 10 years, he allegedly extorted millions of dollars from and abused his victims, forcing some into prostitution. Ray's facing racketeering and sex trafficking charges, among others. The trial began with opening statements on Thursday, followed by testimony from one of Ray's alleged victims, Rosario Santos, who was also the ex-boyfriend of Ray's daughter, Talia. Law and Crime's Adam Klasfeld is inside the courtroom following this case closely. He shares details of that testimony from one of Ray's alleged victims.
Disturbing testimony that we heard for the past 2 days comes from one of Ray's alleged victims, Santos Rosario, who has testified about horrendous abuse by Larry Ray against him and his sister, Felicia Rosario. So today on the stand, we heard and saw recordings, both audio recordings, video recordings. There was one recording played in court showing Santos Rosario, the witness, slapping himself in the face repeatedly in front of his sister at Ray's alleged request to goad his sister to behave to Ray's satisfaction. The witness identified a photograph of his face after this, all swollen up, and he said this was after an hour of slapping himself at Ray's instruction. He said that originally he turned to Ray as a figure for inspiration and attentive ear, and essentially grew to trust him, but there was a twisted turn in that relationship. That's just a sample of what's being seen and heard by these jurors as this case kicks off to a very disturbing start.
Shocking and disturbing indeed. Dina, he held a knife to my genitals. That's the headline, according to Adam's Twitter, who's been in the court this entire time. Ray appears to be an absolute monster from this testimony. Is this case all but done with these facts, or is there something the defense can do?
I mean, it's very hard to come back from this because there's multiple witnesses who are going to testify to similar situations. And they also have video of him interacting with these people. And the testimony really helps explain why they stayed with him and also helps sympathize to what happened to them. Of course, we haven't gotten to the defense case. Maybe they could pull something out, but this type of testimony is very hard to come back from.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the testimony, Terry. How does the testimony of this ex-boyfriend, Ray's daughter, kind of impact the jury in a case like this?
You know, I think this jury is thinking, what kind of monster is this defendant? It is the most bizarre story I think I've ever heard. We know that Santos Rosario dated Ray's daughter, so they put him on the stand first because that is really something that the jury is going to look at and say, how could you have abused him? He's your daughter's boyfriend. I don't understand how you could do these things to anyone, but I think it was very impactful.
Yeah, I mean, his relationship to the family is definitely something that's going to be strong for the prosecution. Thank you both. And of course, thank you for joining us here at Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.